All right, we are now live on May 18th, 2020. This is Sharif Yunus here with Dr. Kevin Majors. And perhaps you didn't know this, but it's actually been snowing almost every day in Finland. But here on the East Coast, we've been getting great weather, so we're very happy about that. Kevin, have you been able to get outside and go for runs or walk outside, or I don't know what you normally do?
Yeah, I try getting down to the Charles River and for walks. There's something magical about the sunlight shimmering on the water that it pulls me, it attracts me. So
That's really cool.
So when I want a good relaxing walk, then that's usually where I try to go. I went for a long run too, which was interesting. Running with the mask on.
Oh, you ran. I don't run with the mask. People give me kind of. I had someone actually yell at me this morning.
It's like altitude training, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah. So. Great. Well, we have an awesome session planned. So we're going to talk about work and ideals and order, intensity and constancy, and how to really bring your ideals to life through work. Mm-hmm. So why don't we just hit the ground running with some questions?
Sounds great.
What do you think? Okay, so the first question, this cuts to the heart of things. Is it possible that there are people for whom it is impossible to focus? I think we all know these people. Maybe we once considered ourselves to be that way.
Exactly.
So Sharif, did you
ever consider yourself unable to focus?
Yeah, I just thought this is how life is going to be. My whole life, I'll never be able to focus on anything. And
yeah, that's right.
So I just resigned myself to that fact a long time ago, and it's
that is so
proven
not true
for me. Yeah.
So I actually love this kind of question because I think in our culture, we love diagnosing people and we love labeling people. And even now, you see like parents, when their kids are growing up, they're trying to see like what labels to apply to them as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. So there's this kind of mania for applying labels to what are really habits. So, and which can be shaped and perfected through virtues. And I think that one of the big misconceptions people have is that there are some people for whom it's just impossible to focus. So now it's like either some people for whom it's impossible to read. Now, dyslexia is a real thing. And so for some people it's harder, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. And so you might have a little more of a steep climb, especially at first, until you get strategies that work for you. So, but even with dyslexia, it's something that people work with. And so there are strategies. Now, I'm not an expert in dyslexia, but I am more of an expert in attention. So in working with people who might believe that they just are broken in some way, and that therefore they can't, they can't work. So you mentioned order, intensity, constancy.
Yep.
And that is the key to understanding how attention works. And so I think it's good for us to just see what is happening when people are really paying attention well, and then how do you practice getting better at that? And the name for that practice is order, and then intensity, and then constancy. So, it all has to do with the fact that we have two different types of attention, broadly speaking. There's task attention and what's called default attention. We need a better name for default attention.
So sometimes we call it predictive attention.
Yeah, I think that's actually, you see in this book on where emotions come from. Not to go too far into that, but there's this idea in neuroscience that the default attention is only doing predictions all the time. Mm-hmm. And that our brains are always making a prediction of what to do next. And so when people have problems with their attention getting pulled every which way, it's because the predictive attention didn't get trained. And in that case, then it doesn't know what to pull you to. And so there's one ideal that shapes how you manage your predictive attention. And that ideal is order. So order should be like an image of the task you're about to do that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
that is exactly, it's like a mountain, and you can see the top of the mountain and the way you're going to get there. So it always has the goal in mind for this, how you like, but the goal really is what would be the best, most beautiful way of doing this period of work or life, whatever it is. And so order is how you materialize an ideal into a task. You take something like of what you want to be practicing, and then order transfers it to that task and materializes it. Okay, now I have a sense of like, what it would be like to be working with this kind of, essentially in work, it's always going to be in some way attaining flow, to be working at your best. And so order is an image of working at your best in this next period of work. But that sense then is how you train your predictive attention. So it's how you put a pattern for it. So now it has something to be aiming for, and it knows what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So that there's really nothing else that you would desire to do in this next period than this one task.
Okay.
And that's
So
what order does.
is order different from like being organized, or what's
Totally
the difference
different. Order in
Okay.
this sense is how you order the work you're about to do to some kind of ideal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a patterning of the work you're about to do. And so what order does is it gives you then the strategy that you're going to follow to attain the end and the steps. That sense of like the strategy and the steps is what order brings to something. And that's what
Okay.
programs the background attention, the predictive attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so it knows it has this image of what you want to be doing.
Mm-hmm. And so that's just to plug optimwork.com, but that's what the projects is doing,
Exactly.
is helping you bring order. So you're identifying what are my goals, what are my strategy, and what is my strategy, and what are the steps.
And the more the goals actually touch on what like in work, the ideal that's always operating is service. Like, how can I make this the best service possible? So
Mm-hmm.
how do I do this in the best way with the highest mastery so that I can serve people the most?
Mm-hmm.
And that's always the sense of like what mastery in here would look like for the sake of service. And
Right.
so the goal is what provides the challenge for you in that time. So you need like before you do anything, have an image of what would it look like to do it super well. So what would it make to make this next period beautiful? But order is Aristotle talks about it in the Ethics, the kalam, the beautiful. He says you need an image of the beautiful for this action before you do anything. So, and then order is essentially how you apply it to this action. And that sets the stage for the next one, which is intensity. And intensity means completely committing your task attention without any reserves left over to this task at hand, the first step of it. And so just like order is all about how you shape your predictive attention so it knows in the background what you want, intensity is how you turn on fully your task attention to completely engage just the first step or the present step of this thing so that there's no reserves left at all. And what that does is, one, it helps predictive attention because it puts it entirely in the background where it works best. But then it also allows you to have your full attention and energy for what you're actually doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. So how much, to what extent, so we talk about processes, outcomes. That's like a kind of distinction that we make. I think a lot of times people think order or intensity or focus even are outcomes. Is part of what we're saying here is, no, these are like processes that you're in control of, and they're ways of applying your mind to this task. They're not just outcomes that happen randomly, or when you do.
And the way you know it's a process is that you actually have control over it. Mm-hmm. Outcomes you never have control over, but processes you do. And so with a process, you're able to like assess, like you can actually think, I need to get a clearer image, which is order, and it's actually reframing as well. It's essentially putting this task in this most positive light and this most positive frame. So there's nothing else you want to do. So you have the sense, okay, then this is exactly what I want to be working on right now. And you can tell if you've done it or not. You can develop a sense that, okay, I think I'm there now. I see what I want it to be like. I see how I want to be shaping it before I do it. And then intensity, you engage it totally. And once you're totally engaged, you wouldn't be checking yourself on, am I fully engaged? But you can develop this awareness that you're not fully engaged. And that leads you to recommit with intensity. And so the fact that you could notice disengaging and then recommit with intensity shows it's a process you have control over. And everyone who has attention issues knows that they can still, at times, when they love something, totally focus on it. And so that shows that, there's nothing actually broken with their attention, unless they had like a serious head trauma or something and they're just post-concussion or something. Okay, then task attention actually does get affected. So, and then you commit yourself. So intensity is entirely in the present moment. So, because task attention only handles the present moment. And it's not thinking about the future at all. It's not thinking about the next step even. It's entirely engaged in the work at the task at hand. It's constancy that then pulls you to the next task. So constancy is what shapes the relationship between these two types of attention. So that now your predictive attention serves your task attention to fulfill the order that you had set. So it feels then like while you're totally engaged in one step, with constancy, then you get pulled to the next step. So constancy is about the transition between steps, and that you're able to then completely immerse yourself in that task. So the hallmark of constancy is actually flow, that you attain flow because now you're just moving right through the task that you committed to do with full order and intensity maintained, which is what constancy does. It maintains order and intensity. So if a person has order and then intensity, with constancy, they go right into flow. And that's the best state of working. And it really is the image of what order had dreamed of in the beginning. And so all of those things are completely trainable. You can get better and better at training your predictive attention with the strategy and steps, and then putting yourself entirely in the present moment, which is now the work of intensity, and then getting pulled through the task in the right way. So I think like if you're working in a group, you experience this more easily. If you're in a meeting and you have an agenda, and if everyone is kind of keeping track of the agenda and the stop time, you just get naturally, everyone has a sense, okay, now it's time to move on to the next thing. Now it's time to move on to the next thing. So constancy is actually easier in groups, and flow is contagious. So if one person's in flow while working, the others tend to also go into it.
Yeah. So this is basically the breakdown for flow at will is order, intensity, constancy.
Exactly.
If you want to go into flow.
I think that order in general, like order in your room, is in a sense part of this, because if we're talking, if work is really how you materialize ideals, well then yes, the order in your room is materializing order in some way. But I think that's not how we want people to first think of it. But if you think of a task like cleaning my room, for that you would need an image of what it means to do it very well. And that's like the standard that you're aiming for as you're about to clean the room and putting order into everything. And so I think the more people do like train their attention well, they tend to always maintain order because they finish tasks. And usually the reason for disorder in a room is unfinished tasks. You didn't complete the whole task by putting things away. And so all these unfinished tasks pile up. So I think it's an effect. It's a trailing indicator maybe, but it's an effect of really living order, intensity, constancy as you work.
Wait, so when you've used this phrase a couple of times, materializing your ideals. What is that?
It makes it real.
So that it makes it real.
It makes it real. Like, so work is how you make any ideal a reality. Because it has to pass through your attention and effort to become practiced. So all it means is before you practice anything, if you wanted to grow in any kind of quality, any kind of habit, you would want to have an image of what that growth would look like, apply yourself fully to it, and then manage the steps so that you're progressing along the plan. And so in fact, without constancy pulling you rightly through the action, you wouldn't form a habit. So it's constancy that forms the habit. And so, it's like, if you're going to be patient in a certain setting, you need an image of what that looks like, apply yourself to it and follow through with it. And constancy produces that habituation curve so that you move through it, and it's easier and easier and easier.
So, okay, I want to grow in kindness this next week.
Yeah.
So you're saying order, intensity, constancy are not just related to work.
The ideal. Yes. Okay. They're actually the essence of acquiring any virtue, any good habit. So you would need, say you're about to have a conversation with someone. And so what would it mean to be more kind in a conversation?
That's order is answering.
Yes, exactly. So order is the image of it. And so so it could be that, for instance, I think one of gets into conversations, but we all tend to hog other people's attention. And to try to switch the topics to things where we're comfortable talking.
Well, everyone does that except me, I've noticed.
Exactly. Yeah, because narcissism makes us blind to this fault. And so, exactly. There's actually a wonderful Art of Manliness blog on the conversational narcissist. And it's about this struggle that takes place. And it's really a commentary in another book, which we can go into more detail if people are interested. But the key is, if you had this image of yourself actually supporting the other person's interests and trying to draw them out and and ask questions and keep the conversation going on what they want, that'd be a great way of practicing kindness. And so you'd have that image of what you're wanting to do before you're there in the conversation. Then you're just giving them your whole attention, and that's intensity. So you're trying to stay totally present in that conversation, not going to your phone, not reading things, not doing other things, but just unitasking. Again, that's like intensity is unitasking, one thing at a time. And you're in that conversation. Constancy then would keep you looking for the right opportunities to keep this wave showing interest going.
Right.
And so you would maintain it then throughout the conversation. And after one conversation doing that, you would have patterned yourself. You would have patterned your behavior in a way that'll be easier next time. And it gets easier the next time. And so that's exactly how we shape ourselves. In order to do that, all you needed was order to get it started. And the start of work of any kind is order, an image of what it is you're after.
Awesome. So can order, intensity, constancy, reframing, mindfulness, challenge, are those the same thing?
It's essentially them applied to work.
Order, intensity. So order is reframing applied to work. Exactly.
And so I think that it's essentially framing the task. Reframing implies that there was something negative that you're flipping. And so that's most true of triggers for anxiety. For anxiety and things, or triggers for craving. And so reframing those is how you turn off automation. This is like applied to work now. The higher thing is just framing this task as, what's the best possible way I could do this? What would be the most beautiful way? That image then does the work of reframing. That's what order does. And that's where you always start. Mindfulness is essentially the most simple form of unitasking. So it's doing one task with no steps. And so the steps are just refocusing. And so it's a great training in unitasking. And that's why it mimics what happens in work when you give your whole attention just to the step that you're on. So in that way, mindfulness trains us for intensity in the task. And then the challenge is worked all the way through the task that you're doing, but it's especially like, how do you keep the challenge is actually keeping intensity and order going. And that's what constancy does. And it keeps on getting the next step ready and keeping the challenge level. And if we're getting slightly off task, then constancy keeps us on task. It prevents missteps, which are distractions. And so it prevents our default or predictive attention from pulling us to the wrong thing. And that's the constant challenge in work, is to stay the course until we have completed this task. And so it's like fulfilling the goal that order had set itself for. So order sets the challenge, has an image of it, constancy then gets you there.
So how do you distinguish intensity and constancy, because order and intensity, okay, I get it. They're two totally different. Now, intensity and constancy, it seems like constancy is just like intensity stretched out.
Yeah, so
but is it
it's like
actually
climbing a
something
mountain.
new?
In climbing a mountain, the intensity is your willingness to put full effort into each step. And constancy is what kind of guides you up the right path.
Mm-hmm.
So it's what directs the step. You still need the muscle involved to actually do the stepping. And that muscle is the exercising here of task attention. So of embracing this step and giving it your whole effort. So, but then you still need the direction of constancy to keep it going. So what constancy does is it moves order and intensity through time. So it moves the image and the effort through time to complete the task.
Well, I want to work with order, intensity, and constancy.
Exactly. And I think that this is why someone had asked us a question about, is it ever okay just to be letting the mind wander? Do we always need something to do? And often that's a question that we have, that people ask us.
Yeah.
It's like, do we always need to be working?
Or is it okay to just let our default mode just run wild?
Exactly. So what I would say to that is we always want some kind of image of what we're shaping ourselves to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're with loved ones, would you want your default mode running wild? Then you'd just be trapped in your head. You'd just be kind of lost in your own thoughts. I don't see how that's desirable or enjoyable. So now to rest with them is great. To, have something fun that you're doing together, just to be reading together and be quietly in each other's presence can be a way of showing affection. And then just reading the thing you're interested in and staying with the others, or watching something or talking. So I think generally speaking, there's always like a good way of employing our attention and it doesn't mean it's strenuous, and it doesn't mean that it's super effortful, not by any means, but it does mean that we're not just ruminating and worrying, which is usually what happens.
Yeah. So. Well, I think that concludes our session for today.
All right. People have been asking great questions, and we have more questions to get to, but we're always eager to hear any questions people have on these things, or on anything regarding work or attention or life. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for watching, and we'll be with you next week, Monday, May 25th at 10 a.m. See you then.
See you.